Well, the Jeffrey Epstein story continues to spin out of control. It has gotten totally out of control of Donald Trump's hands. He doesn't know if he's coming or going, and we don't know which direction MAGA is going in. Half of them seem to be going against him, and the other half are starting to rally to him. So we'll see if he can hold it together, but it's going to be hard. Everybody's pretty familiar with the story at this point, I understand. But I wanted to just read a couple of excerpts from two articles. And I think there are some aspects of these stories that are getting a little bit overlooked. And it's understandable because everybody wants to talk about the big parts of the story and how it's, tearing the White House apart and causing all kinds of chaos, which I understand is a fun part of the story. But there's also a very serious part, and it's easy to overlook in our maybe unwarranted jubilation that this is happening. And I wanted to look at these more serious aspects because even though this is happening, it bodes ill for the future. So the two themes that I want to bring out in these stories are the theme of loyalty and corruption. And I want to know, I'm going to read just parts of them because I know you're already familiar with the whole thing, but parts of the stories that touch on those two themes, and then I'll tie it all together. And we'll see how authoritarian regimes turn out bad and why they turn out so bad. So this is first the story in Wired that broke the story that the videotape from the prison, from the Manhattan Correctional Center, the MCC in downtown Manhattan, where Epstein was, well, we'll just say where he died. Okay. I won't say how he died. I don't think anybody really knows. But this is the story that reveals that the videotape that was released by the Department of Justice last week and in which they claimed was raw, unedited footage, Wired uncovered the fact that this footage was actually edited, which is pretty disturbing when you think about the fact that they said it wasn't. And you may think, well, they didn't know because that happened years ago. But there's one part of one of these stories that reveals that they edited this story less than 2 months ago on May 23rd, I believe, this year. It's June, it's July 18th now. So it's a little short of 2 months. So a little short of 2 months ago, somebody was editing this footage while all the talk was going on. This was during the time, after Pam Bondi had handed out the slick little notebooks to the new media people, the new MAGA media people, said, entitled Jeffrey Epstein Phase One, implying that there would be a phase two and maybe phase three and four, who knows. But this was right after that, a couple of months after that. Were they starting to find out that something was on these tapes that they didn't want anyone to see? Well, let's look at these two stories for a minute, and then we'll talk about how loyalty and corruption comes into play. So this is the story from Wired where they discovered 3 minutes was missing. Newly uncovered metadata reveals that nearly 3 minutes of footage were cut from what the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI described as full, raw surveillance video from the only functioning camera near Jeffrey Epstein's prison cell the night before he was found dead. Okay? Wired previously reported that the video had been stitched together in Adobe Premiere Pro from two video files, contradicting the Justice Department's claim that it was raw footage. So when they say raw footage, they mean it's untouched, it's raw, it's unedited, untouched, nothing's happened to it, it's straight out of the camera or whatever, recording system they had and straight to you. But this is going against that. It's contradicting that story. Now, further analysis shows that one of the source clips was approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds longer than the segment included in the final video, indicating that footage appears to have been trimmed before release. It's unclear what, if anything, the minutes cut from the first clip showed. So obviously, if this video was clipped, nobody, none of us will know or be able to see what was taken out. So that it's, we'll never know if it was something significant or not. But just the fact that it was clipped at all that it was edited at all. And the fact that it was done just a couple of months ago, as recently as that, as recently as a couple of months ago, is very significant. All right, the nearly 3-minute discrepancy may be related to the widely reported 1-minute gap between 11:58 p.m., 11:58 and 58 seconds, and 12 midnight that Attorney General Pam Bondi has attributed to a nightly system reset. The metadata confirms that the first video file, which showed footage from August 9th, 2019, continued for several minutes beyond what appears in the final version of the video and was trimmed to the 11:58 p.m. mark right before the jump to midnight. Kind of interesting. So they're saying that that jump where it skips a minute right before midnight, this is where they trimmed out some video. So kind of interesting. The cut to the first clip doesn't necessarily mean that there is additional time unaccounted for. The second clip picks up at midnight, which suggests that the two would overlap, nor does it prove that the missing minute was cut from the video. So basically, they're saying we don't know what happened or what was going on here, but we do know something was cut. Something was edited on this video. And they told us nothing was edited. And turns out not only was something edited, but it was edited very recently while this administration was in power, while this administration had complete possession of this video, something was edited. That's important. On Friday, Wired published an analysis of metadata embedded in the video confirmed by independent video forensics experts. That'll come into play in a minute, which indicates that the file was assembled from at least two source clips, saved multiple times, exported, and then uploaded to the DOJ's website where it was presented as raw footage. So a lot happened to it. They didn't just go in and like clip one thing and then they're done. They did a lot of stuff. They did put in some time on it and they did a good bit of work on it. Wired's initial analysis found that those saves took place over a 23-minute span. However, further analysis, now get this, pay attention to this. Further analysis of additional metadata shows the file was actually edited and saved several times over a period of more than 3.5 hours on May 23rd, 2025, this year, less than 2 months ago. So this Justice Department changed something on the video very recently. And I don't know what it means, but I do know they were trying to figure out what they were going to release and that they must have felt like they had to release something until they finally concluded they don't want to release anything. But, if they're working on the video, it indicates that they were thinking originally they were going to release the full video. And then they thought, well, wait, we got to make some changes to it. Not a good sign. Both analyses found that the two clips, labeled blah, 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 the names, were stitched together. And they go into details about how long they were and all that. I don't want to bother you with that. And I don't want to be bothered with it either. Too many details. Anyway, so they're saying the two clips were stitched together, edited together, meaning nearly 2 minutes and 53 seconds were cut from the end. All right. Then down here, Wired reviewed its findings with two independent video forensics experts, each with over 15 years of experience in Premiere and video production, who confirmed that the edit occurred just before the missing minute mark and that approximately 3 minutes of footage were cut from the original clip. All right, now let's look at this other story, and I'm going to tie them together. Believe me, I will do that in just a minute. This is from Axios, the scoop, the day of the scoop, last week. FBI's Dan Bongino clashes with AG Bondi over handling of Epstein files. I'm going to skip through most of it because I just want to get to a couple of important parts. At the center of the argument, a surveillance video from outside Epstein's cell that the administration released, saying it was proof that no one had entered the room before he killed himself. Okay, so that's what they're talking about. Then down here, Bongino, who had pushed Epstein conspiracy theories as a MAGA-friendly podcast host before President Trump appointed him to help lead the FBI, had found the video and touted it publicly and privately as proof that Epstein hadn't been murdered. All right. So I want to look at this from the standpoint of competence and what happens when you appoint people not based on their competence or their expertise or their skill or their experience, but rather based on their loyalty. One last thing here. After the video's missing minute was discovered, Bongino was blamed internally for the oversight, according to three sources. So here's what happened with him in the video. He looked at the video and watched it much as one of us would have watched it, just as a normal person with no particular expertise in video. And he looked at it. He didn't even catch the missing minute at midnight. He didn't even catch that. I don't know if I would have caught that. I might have caught that. You might have caught it. That was a kind of thing anybody could have caught. You don't have to have any particular knowledge or expertise in video production or video editing to catch that because the time code's right up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. But he didn't even catch that, much less anything else about this video. Now, if people edited it in the Justice Department, it's possible he may have known that already and he was trying to cover that up. Or it's possible he didn't know anything about it and wasn't trying to cover anything up, but he didn't know enough to say, hey, doesn't the FBI have a video forensics lab where we can send this down and have them analyze it? And aren't they specialists and experts in doing that? Maybe that would be a good idea, huh? No, he just looked at it as a normal person with the naked eye. He didn't use a computer to analyze it or look at the metadata, or he probably didn't even know you could do that. And he missed the fact not only that there was a missing minute, which he was embarrassed over when that was called out, but he missed the fact that there were 3 minutes missing and that pretty significant editing had taken place. What do they say? Over about a 3 hour period. He missed all that because he goes into the FBI into this job as deputy director with no experience with the FBI and no investigative experience. He was a cop here in New York in the 90s, between 1995 and 1999. He came in as a new recruit, a cadet, and he left as a patrolman. Okay? Nothing against patrolmen, but they're not experts or specialists in video, nor should they be. You have departments that have people that do those things. But it didn't even occur to him, apparently, to check with the FBI's video forensic team. And I'm sure they have one. They have to have one. So that to me just blew me away when I realized that. But the fact that these people are getting appointed based on their loyalty to Trump, their loyalty to the leader, to the regime's leader, is far more important than any experience they could bring to the job or any expertise. It's kind of like talk about your DEI hire, your diversity, equity, and inclusion. These guys are literally getting hired because they're loyal to Trump. And it has nothing to do with their qualifications. So it's ironic that people always talking against DEI saying, well, that brings in unqualified people because it's just based on their race. If you know you're the right race, you'll get in regardless of your skills. And they turn around and they're actually doing that. Maybe that's why they think everybody else is doing it. I don't know. But this is either incredible incompetence or incredible corruption. When you're hired based on loyalty, you're going to be incompetent and you will also necessarily have to be corrupt. Now, the corruption comes to us via this article that caught it, the Wired article, showing that it was edited. Now, why? Regardless of what they did to it, they did something to it. The fact they did anything to it is a sign of guilt. Because why couldn't they just release the raw video? Obviously, if they couldn't release it without editing, they had to remove something. They took something out they didn't want us to see. We don't know what that was, but why else would you edit it before you release it, right? This was a couple of months ago. They can't say Biden did this. They can't even say it happened in Trump's first term. It happened several weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, little less than 4 weeks. I mean, that's corruption right there. And I'll tell you something else that's corrupt. Bill Barr said when this happened in 2019, when Epstein died in prison, Bill Barr came out almost immediately and he said, "Well, we know he committed suicide." And it was because everybody said, "Well, hey, how could he commit suicide in such a maximum security area of this prison?" And the story came out was the guards fell asleep. The guards fell asleep. There were two guards in that area. And the problem is guards can't just fall asleep in a prison because every few hours they do a count. They count the inmates to make sure they're all there. And they'll go into these rooms. These Epstein was basically in solitary confinement, and they will look through the slot. They will poke him, make sure he moves, make sure he makes some noise, make sure he's there and alive. Okay. And guess what? If the count's not done, if one area of the prison, the count's not done, alarms go off all over the prison because the people downstairs start to assume he was on the 10th floor. And the people downstairs start to assume, wait, if we didn't get the count from that area, either the guards were kidnapped or killed or something, but something's gone really wrong because each area has to turn in this count at the same time. They do it at different times every day, but at the time they do it, all the areas have to turn in the count. And if one doesn't turn in the count, it's not like the management of the prison or the higher ups downstairs don't know. It's not like they just let the whole night pass without checking into it and finding out why the count wasn't done. No, they send people up with guns because they don't know what they're going to confront when they get there. So they send people up to check on these guards, find out why the count wasn't turned in. In other words, you can't just fall asleep if you're the guard in the MCC downtown in Manhattan. You can't just fall asleep. It's not possible. So that story is completely false. The story Bill Barr told us in 2019, absolutely, completely false. Those guards did not fall asleep. It's not possible. They didn't fall asleep unless somebody wanted them to fall asleep. Fall asleep. You know what I mean? Because it's not possible for that to happen. That's not how prisons work. And you read any stories or anything about prisons, you'll know that's not how prisons work. So that's not possible. Anyway, Dan Bongino's and Pam Bondi's blunders are an early warning system to us that if this ship doesn't get righted soon, this American ship, and put back on a lawful basis, America is no longer going to be safe. Think about it. Think about it. When every waking moment of the top law enforcement officials of the country is spent trying to divine what the leader of the regime wants that day, this kind of thing will happen over and over and over again, and all the wasted time. It's unbelievable. Like, when all their time was spent trying to appease the leader rather than fighting crime, who would think that that could possibly make for a safer America? And who would say a less safe America is great? See, that doesn't make America great again. That makes America worse than it ever was before. No, this administration, despite all their pretty words and all their fancy promises, it's not making America great again. It is making America worse than it's ever been. So while it may be fun to sit around and laugh about what's happening, and as we watch MAGA fall apart and enjoy that, uh, and it seems not to have much practical consequence because yeah, so what? He's dead already, and we know people. He was either murdered or he either committed suicide, and maybe we'll never know. And the victims, nothing further will happen to them. It would be nice if we could uh, uh, put some of the perpetrators on trial, but looks like that's not going to happen no matter who's in office. So we'll all go about our lives anyway. So it seems not to have much practical consequence. But the truth is, we'll all soon see the real world consequences that will come as a result of all this time that's wasted every day on petty maneuvering and constantly trying to appease a capricious leader, a leader who's completely unpredictable, who changes his mind on a whim, who's impulsive and subject to sudden mood changes. You can never please a leader like that. And things will always start to fall apart, just like they're doing right now. Things will become chaotic, and it doesn't take any help from the outside. It doesn't take any help from Democrats. You know, it will implode on its own. But just because it implodes doesn't mean things will get better. Because a lot of times when authoritarian regimes like this start to implode, the leader becomes worse and angrier and starts doing worse and worse things. So that could happen. So, we're watching all of this. We don't really know what it will lead to in the future. So I don't know whether to be happy about it or, afraid of it. But I know in the long term, as long as these people are in office, things aren't going to be good. Um, and one other thing, the sad thing, the really sad thing, and the tragic thing is all of this was known. It was known what he was like before the last election. It was well known what kind of person he was and how he would lead the country or mislead the country. Anyway, the people, though, his biggest supporters, they just shoved it all under the rug and they said, it doesn't matter because he's going to do what we want him to do. He's going to enact the policies we want enacted. And that's all they cared about. They cared nothing about anything else. They didn't care about character. And these are the people who in the 90s, when Clinton was president, all they could say is character matters, character matters, character matters. Then they get their guy who's going to do some things that they want a president to do. No character at all. And suddenly character doesn't matter. Character doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, you know? But they're gonna find out soon. And unfortunately, we're all gonna find out soon that it does matter. And that's the problem. We're all going to have to suffer with them to learn that lesson. And so many people are going to be hurt in such serious ways. Lives will be ruined. People will die. People have already died. What am I talking about? They've already died. It's just I, I just try to understand, how do we become such a foolish society that so many tens of millions of people in our country saw all of this? They saw it 10 years ago and they said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that we get the policies we want. Well, we're all going to find out it matters. And we're going to find out, it looks like, pretty soon. So let's just keep America and our fellow citizens in our prayers. And let's all get out there and do what we can. Speak out, speak truth to people. Speak truth to people, whether they reject it or not. Just tell them. Tell them kindly. Be nice, you know, but don't ever back down from speaking the truth. And we know what it is, and we have to keep speaking it. All right. All right. Well, that's it for me, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.